The GLP-1 market is projected to hit $100 billion by 2030, and the weight loss drug actually works. Products like Ozempic have real customers that have seen real weight loss over the last 5 years, but we are also starting to see some of those same customers experience real side effects.
If you ask me, Ozempic and the GLP-1 market is about 10 years away from a sad commercial that says, did you take Ozempic between 2024 and 2026? You may be entitled to compensation. So is Ozempic a miracle drug or a settlement waiting to happen?
The mission is to shine the light into the darkness.
Ozempic and Wegovy alone did $26 billion in sales last year, and Charles Barkley has never been this skinny in his life. The drug clearly works.
That's true, but Novo Nordisk stock is actually down 70% from its all-time high. The market that built this company into one of the most valuable in Europe has spent 18 months pricing in something. The question is whether it's pricing in temporary setbacks or something bigger.
Studies show that while people are losing weight from the GLP-1, a large percentage of people gain the weight back shortly after they stop taking it. That seems more like a convenient feature of the business model rather than a failure of the drug.
A drug that requires lifetime use to maintain results needs a 20-year safety profile that just doesn't exist yet. Ozempic has been mainstream for only 5 years. Nobody knows what 2 decades of GLP-1 receptor agonists does to the human body. And the studies showing significant muscle loss in users are not a minor footnote. Muscle loss at scale is a public health consequence that's going to attract regulatory attention at some point.
Fair point on the safety profile, but the cardiovascular benefits are real and independently verified. Wegovy just got approved in the UK for cardiovascular disease treatment. That's a real impact.
I'm just saying, we are one large adverse outcome study away from a completely different narrative, and we don't have the long-term data to rule that out yet. But let's talk about the largest player in the space for a second, Novo Nordisk. The company who makes Ozempic. Ozempic is without a doubt a household name with the biggest market share. But do you see any real competition for them in the future?
For starters, the telehealth companies pose a real threat. They're selling compounded versions of semaglutide at a fraction of the price, which is just a fancy way of saying they're selling generic versions of Ozempic for cheaper. The FDA has been slow to shut this down because compounded drugs occupy a regulatory gray area. Novo Nordisk could be losing meaningful market share to competitors they cannot fully stop legally. Still, Eli Lilly's Zepbound is the more serious competitive threat. Eli Lilly is not only a powerhouse name in the space, but their drug shows better weight loss outcomes in head-to-head data. Novo Nordisk responded by launching a higher dose Wegovy in an oral pill form. The first oral GLP-1 on the market.
Novo introducing the first GLP-1 is a real milestone. I'll admit that. But regardless, right now, Novo Nordisk is facing thousands of lawsuits over gastroparesis and other side effects. That number is expected to grow.
That's actually not super concerning.
But still, the unknown science underneath the GLP-1 market is the real risk here. Look, the drug is obviously growing, but the risks are real. The weight loss coming back, the muscle loss, and some of the lawsuits could be a real concern here.
Novo trading at roughly 13 times forward earnings is genuinely cheap for a company with this revenue base and pipeline depth. The first oral GLP-1 is a real catalyst. The cardiovascular approvals are opening new markets. The lawsuit risk is real, but it's not a real concern to me, at least not at this time. The GLP-1 market as a whole has its risks, but I don't think the industry is folding anytime soon. It's definitely something to pay close attention to.
All right, well, I hear you. There's definitely some potential here, but you gotta admit, there's a lot of risk. So do you think this is just a fad as far as the GLP-1 market, or do you believe in this industry long term?
So we definitely seen real results. We've seen from celebrities to average people lose weight and without any really serious side effects that we've been able to identify so far. Not to say that there aren't any at all, but at least in the short term, we're not seeing any major side effects. So with that said, and with the fact that these companies will only improve these products, I do think this is something that people will use. What do you think?
I'm on the fence about it because I think it may stay around just because America is so obese and people love a get rich quick scheme, or in this case, a get skinny quick scheme. So I don't know that the market will eventually fade. I do think they will face some pushback. I do think some of the copycats will eventually fall off, but I do think the big guys like Novo and Lilly are going to continue to keep making different variations of these GLP-1s, and I think people are going to keep buying them because people love being able to lose weight. But I do also think that we might get that commercial we talked about where, 15 years from now, people are having to get these settlements because there's all these different side effects that people didn't realize was there.
Yeah, but they would have made their money. So I don't think they care about 15 years from now. That's how these drug companies think, is like, oh, if we can sell it today, someone else will be CEO in 15 years.
Wait, I gotta ask you more about that. You think they would be fine with the fact that if they're just like, all right, in 15 years, if all of this crumbles, they're like, well, we made a massive amount of money.
Yeah.
Like,
Have you heard about the opioid epidemic?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened then. They knew what was happening. They're like, oh, well, someone is going to pay the price for this in 15 years. And they did pay the price for it. Anyways, we have these drugs that I think you brought up a point about, America's psychology, where we are obese to begin with, but we also want the easy way out. And so I'm not necessarily saying that these drugs are the easy way out, but it's similar to, steroids in my mind, where you'll see a guy who's jacked out of his mind. If he says, yeah, I'm this jacked because I take steroids, that's one thing. But if he lies to you and says, no, I'm this jacked because I eat healthy and I go to the gym every day, then that sets unrealistic expectations in your mind. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, if you know Lizzo, she a little bit big, before, and now she's trimmed down, and she told her fans, no, she didn't touch Ozempic. And then, they called her out on it, and her story slowly changed. So, oh, I experimented with it, but like, how unfair is that to her fans, who now think if they can't lose the weight like she did, there's something wrong with them,
I think you made a really good comparison with the steroid, and I actually want to talk about that for a second, because I actually think these GLP-1s are worse than steroids, and as far as the side effects could potentially be worse. And here's why. With a steroid, steroids are more of a boost. Like, I've never met somebody or heard of somebody, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've never heard of somebody who's taken steroids who does not work out at all. Like, it's typically a boost with working out, or you're already an athlete. Like, the guys that have been known to use it are like weightlifters.
Right. It's guys they're already in the gym. They want to break that plateau. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. You're already in the gym, and it like 10x's your growth, basically. Like, it's like you're already doing the work, and this is going to make you huge, and it's going to make you more sustainable, and it's going to make you able to compete
Not
longer.
sustainable, but yes.
Sustainable is the wrong word, but I mean, it's going to help you to compete. But these GLP-1s are like, some people are just literally, they're not changing their habits at all. They're like eating the same crap. They're just sitting on the couch. And this isn't everybody, of course, but there's people that are not changing their habits, are not doing anything active, have terrible habits, but are losing weight. And then they gain it back. So I think either people are going to start becoming addicted to this stuff, or we're going to see a bunch of people who can't afford to keep taking it, or they have to stop taking it. They just gain all the weight back. And we might see some issues from that.
That was always the case with every fad diet, right? Anytime you have a diet where you lose weight, or like you've seen the show The Biggest Loser, those guys almost always gain the weight back. And it's because if you don't change your actual lifestyle underneath it, then you're putting a band-aid over the problem, and you're not solving the actual problem. So I 100% agree with you that there's a very unhealthy trend, because we've been talking about GLP-1s as if they're just for weight loss. There's a bunch that they can treat, diabetes and, some heart disease and some other
And that's
things.
how they started.
Right, exactly. And then then they figured out, like, oh wait, people also are losing weight on this stuff. But I think people, they slingshot back and forth. Like, they go on a diet and they gain the weight back. But like, this seems like it's something that is easy to take, which could be the issue, right? So unlike a diet, which is hard and you have to continue to do it, it might be easy to continue to do these injections, especially if there's now this oral tablet. People may be on this their whole life, and we don't know the effects of that. We're already seeing weird things like Ozempic face or whatever. Like, what if there's worse effects? I don't know.
That's why I want to explore the question of like, how sustainable is this actual GLP-1 industry? We know the major companies are sustainable, right? Like Novo and Lilly. If this phases out in 15 years and all this crazy stuff happens, those guys are going to cash out and they're going to come up with another drug. It's not going to be a big deal. But the GLP-1 market could go away, though, if it gets too crazy. That's a real option. But I still kind of lean toward it not going away, and it ends up being something where this just becomes a part of people's normal expenses. And I think Hims is contributing to this too. And I think they make some of the knockoff drugs as well for GLP-1s, but like where they're selling people all of these different pills, and this is a whole separate episode, but they're selling people all these different pills that can take for depression or for, you know, hair loss, or for, you know, you got the blue chews out there and just all type of stuff. And I think this may just be one of the additional pills that people just have in their arsenal, where it's like, oh, I took my depression pill and I took my weight loss pill, and that's just the norm.
That's a really interesting thing you bring up, because that is 100% the way we're moving as a society. I don't necessarily think it's great, but like we are moving to the direction where we have a pill for everything. And I was talking to, you know, somebody at the dog park the other day, and they said they gave their dog Xanax. Can you imagine 1,000 years ago, people being worried about their dog having anxiety or whatever they needed the Xanax for? It's cool that our chemistry has advanced this far that we can create these pills for everything, but we can pretty much target specific issues in humans, depression or, you know, ADHD or whatever it is, and create these drugs to solve those issues. Now, obviously the drugs always have side effects, and we don't know what the side effects are with this drug, but like I 100% agree with you that this is probably just going to be one of those drugs in the cocktail of drugs that we take as Americans.
We do have a issue with trying to achieve this cosmetic perfection. There's theories out there. I don't know if you ever heard this theory, but there's a theory that humans were not intended to really see their reflection often. Most people look in the mirror at least in the morning, like when you wake up, and then when you pass a mirror, you're looking, you know, oh, I got this on my shirt, I got this on my jeans. But the theory is that we're not even concerned with how we look, really. Like we may see ourselves every once in a while, but like that's not a concern at all. We're just living our life.
That's how like the caveman would have been. Yeah, 100%.
That's how the caveman would have been. And we're so far away from that.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of that has to do with consumerism and selling us different stuff. And yeah, it's crazy.
That's a really interesting point. It's like, you know, caveman would have seen his reflection 5 times in his life, you know, in the water of a lake or something. But like now, every single day, like we're pushed to worry about, hey, how do you look? Are you skinny enough? Does your hair look good? Does your clothes look good? It's all about consumerism. They want us to buy things so that we look better. That's a really interesting point. Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
I have one final question for you, which I think is good, and maybe some viewers may be wondering, but from an investment standpoint, and don't even just think about yourself here, but I'm just saying in general, do you think the GLP-1 market is a good investment, especially now that it's down, the stock is down? Do you think it's a good investment for the long term specifically?
You said don't think about myself because you already know my answer individually. Is that I personally don't invest in pharmaceutical companies just because I don't like the fact that they have to get approval from the FDA for the products, and that's a risk. I prefer to invest in something you can know. But if I were a pharmaceutical investor, Novo and Nordisk is growing their revenue very quickly. For, you know, pharmaceutical company, it's like 20 to 30% versus typically it'd be like 5 or 4% or something. But anyways, that's mainly because of these drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. So yeah, it could be definitely an interesting investment opportunity. But at the same time, when you buy these companies, you're not just buying these drugs, you're buying a portfolio of drugs they have, you know, for Alzheimer's and cancer and all these other things. So I would think of it as an investment, almost like diversifying a bunch of stocks. You're diversifying across their drug portfolio, and Ozempic and Wegovy are just a part of those. What about you?
Personally, I wouldn't buy it, but maybe for different reasons than you. I just, ethically, I don't know how much I agree with just the GLP-1 market and even some of the other drugs that these guys are selling. But if I'm looking at it from a strictly investment standpoint, especially if I'm just looking at like, you know, a 5-10 year hold, I think the GLP-1 market is going to continue to grow. Like, I don't think this is the bottom. I guess that's my main point. I definitely don't think this is the bottom. Like, maybe it doesn't stay around forever, but I think the drug is going to continue to be more accessible to people, and it's going to continue to grow. And maybe it does burst at some point, but I don't think today is that day.
Just to bounce off of what you were saying, one last thing, like the GLP market isn't just growing, it's growing like crazy fast. So I do think the biggest risk is, like you said, some future lawsuit or whatever, some future side effect that we don't project. But anyways, from 2018 to 2023, spending in the GLP market increased 500%. and it's expected to grow at 12 to 15% for the next 10 years or so. So definitely opportunity there, not necessarily for me, but anyways, we want to know what you guys think. Drop your take in the comments below. Do you think the GLP-1 market is a long-term play? And are you buying the dip or steering clear? Subscribe so you do not miss the next episode. And remember,
This is all just for stocks and giggles.